Tonight, our guests will be Donnie Berthiaume and Matthew Castriotta vying for the 5th Worcester District seat for state representative. Don't go anywhere.
Woo!
It's always the 6th that's a charm.
I don't think the 12th. Well, 6 was pretty good, but that 12th one was also
Good evening and welcome to our show tonight, The Other Side. I'm here with my host, as always, Mr. Paul Fournier, who just got back from Rhode Island and saving his son's boat. Paul, glad to have you here tonight.
Good to be here.
And our guests are Matthew Castriotta and Donnie Berthiaume. And it's going to be a televised debate, so please, if you have any questions, call in 508-885. Help me out here? 7967.
It's on the screen, buddy.
Oh. Man, I'm telling you.
I used to do the same thing.
I swear to God. So good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for coming in. Definitely appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having us in.
What we're going to do is we're going to do round robin on the questions. We'll start with Matt first, and then we'll go to Donnie. But we're going to give you 2 minutes each to go ahead and introduce yourself. So Matt, why don't we start with you first?
All right. Well, good evening, Spencer. My name is Matt Castriotta, and I want to be your next state representative. For the past 21 years, I've had the good fortune of being a school teacher and a coach in a fine school district. It's been a very rewarding career, both personally and professionally. I've taught over 2,000 students and coached over 600 athletes. So you might be wondering why I'm willing to give up that career and take a pay cut to serve you on Beacon Hill. Well, for the last 15 years, I was a selectman in the town of Hubbardston. My 5 terms on the board coincided with very challenging fiscal times. When I was first elected, the economy was booming. It was 1999. The stock market was up. Unemployment was down. And then not long into my first term, the dot-com bubble burst. Then 9/11 came along, the war in Iraq, the financial meltdown. So for most of my time on the board, times were really challenging fiscally. And each one of those events could have convinced me to step off the board at any time and let somebody else come along and deal with the challenges and the problems. But I didn't do that. I stayed the course, rolled up my sleeves, worked with my colleagues, and together, collaboratively, we solved lots of problems, developed new financial management policies, overhauled the budget process, developed a new town charter, and I'm happy to say tonight that Hubbardston is in a very strong place financially. We went to town meeting in June with a $12,000 budget surplus. All departments are fully funded. We also borrowed $2 million last summer to reconstruct 8 miles of roads in Hubbardston. We were able to do that because of the capital fund that we established within the limits of Prop 2.5, so we did that with no override. I believe that my perspective as a teacher and as a coach and as a selectman, as well as my experience, would help me to serve you effectively down on Beacon Hill. I believe that I can be an agent of positive change in Boston, in the same way that I was as a Hubbardston selectman for 15 years. I believe I have what it takes to make sure that your tax dollars are spent wisely in Boston. I look forward to a lively debate tonight. I hope by the end of it that you will consider hiring me as your next state representative.
Okay.
Great.
Donnie?
Good evening, everyone. Everybody probably knows me in Spencer, and I believe we're still streaming East Brookfield.
I think so, yeah.
But if not, my name is Donnie Berthiaume. I've been a selectman in Spencer for 8 years, married, wife Wendy, who I'm sure everybody knows a lot better than me. She does all the stuff for the kids in town. I have 2 kids. Was a selectman for the last 8 years, decided to do this because in the last 8 years we've been cut in our state aid over $800,000. $800,000 is a big chunk in a small budget like ours, and we've only gotten about $300,000 of that back. So we're still down probably $500,000 in state aid from where we were in 2008. So being a selectman, you get to uniquely see these issues and how it affects towns and what they have to cut. And as you're well aware of, we had to cut some certain things in Spencer, and I was lucky enough to be able to attend most of the towns in the district, the 11 town meetings. I think I did 8 of the 11. And it was a common theme. Common theme is state aid, state aid, state aid. I can give you an example. This year we had roughly $200,000 in new monies in Spencer between $50,000 more in state aid we got in some local growth. but we had an increase set on us in our foundation budget for the school department for 253. So automatically we were about $40,000 in the hole. And this just doesn't work. This is inexcusable. Our state budget has gone from 26 billion, sorry, there's a lot of numbers in there, to 36 billion in 10 years while local aid has gone down. This is one of the main reasons I'm running, among others, and I'm sure we'll get into that tonight. So I gave up my seat, and Matt did too. Neither one of us decided to run for re-election because this is a big commitment that you're going to give to the people in this district in the 11 towns. So
15 seconds, Donnie.
15 seconds, and so that's it. So I look forward to questions, and as always, my cell phone number is everywhere, so you call me if you have any anytime.
All right, sounds good. So let's get started with the questions,
Well,
Mr.
you guys with the time, you're right.
We don't screw around.
really
We want to get as many questions in as we possibly can.
Yep.
Mr. Castriotta, we'll take it with you first, Matt. As you know, in most debates, the question is asked, why would you make a good state representative? Our question to the both of you is, what we want to know is, can you tell us, in your opinion, why your opponent would not make as good a state representative as you, and what are the significant differences between you and your opponent?
That's a good little twist on the question.
All right, well, that's a great question. I think what we have in common is that we were both selectmen. Donnie served 8 years, I served 15. We also have in common the fact that we both got off the board in June. But that's where it ends. When my opponent stepped off the board, Spencer was left with a $500,000 deficit. And the voters of Spencer are going to be voting on election night on whether or not to pay for that. When I got off the board in June, we had a $12,000 surplus. All departments were fully funded. And we got there through creative problem solving. We got there through regionalizing, reaching across town borders to work with other communities. We regionalized dispatch. We regionalized animal control. We outsourced assessors services. We came close to sharing a DPW director with Rutland, and if we had, we would have been two of the only communities in the entire state with that sort of arrangement. So I have a track record of being a problem solver. I was a financial analyst before I became a school teacher, so I took that business mindset to the select board in Hubbardston, and I was always aware that things cost money. I was always aware that you need to find ways to be creative. I was always willing to work collaboratively with my colleagues. And at the end of my tenure, Hubbardston is in a very strong financial position. Like I said, we have a $12,000 surplus, and I know my opponent can't speak about that in the same way that I can.
Okay, that sounds good. Donnie?
You just forget one thing. We both do a lot for kids in our communities. Matt's a coach, and you know we run all this stuff in the town for the kids.
Okay, look, but we want to stay focused on what the question is. Why your opponent would not
I'm getting it.
would not make a good state representative?
I'm not going to say he wouldn't make a good state representative. I would say I'm better because I want to go to Boston and change what's going on there and not keep everything the same. I want to end benefits for illegal immigrants and bring that money back to the towns, among other things. I mean, as far as our deficit in Spencer, that was because of the mix-up of the school system. Before that, we were in tremendous financial shape. We have $1.2 million in stabilization, and I think we're the only town around where we negotiated and our employees pay 40% of their insurance. I don't think there's anyone around that does that. During that time, we also did the senior worker program, you know, that allows seniors to work off their taxes, and we incorporated the Veterans Tax Relief Program that says if you're activated in your reserves, you go to active duty, you don't pay property tax while you're gone, and you don't have to make it up when you get back. As far as I know, we're the only town still in the Commonwealth that does that. So during that time, we were able to put free cash away, fix all our town buildings. Actually, Hubbardston's going through the same issue we did a few years ago with their town buildings. They have a committee. And some of the same problems we had just from lack of maintenance and stuff needs updating, but we were able to do all that. This is after the state aid cut, and unfortunately the superintendent in town left us with a problem that we had to make up, and we had to pay it. So state says you have to pay a bill, you have to pay a bill.
So, you know, do you find any significant differences between you and Mr. Castriotta?
Oh, the difference is I want to go to Boston and do all these things to change this. You know, there's scandal after scandal. There's tax dollars being wasted. There's EBT reform that needs to be done. All these things need to be done. And the Republican Party has tried to do this in Boston. They've tried to file amendments for more local aid, and it's gone right down party lines for the most part and said no. So I think that's what we'd be different in Boston.
All right, that sounds fair, Paul.
Any rebuttal, Matt?
Well, yeah, I mean, I respect the fact that Donnie wants to be an agent of change, but I think one of us at the table has a track record of being an agent of change, and that's myself. You know, when I first got on the board, I was very aware of the fact, again, that things cost money. I took a really difficult vote at town meeting back in the year 2000 on the Cops Fast grant. You know, the federal government held out the carrot that if we hired a police officer, additional police officer, then the federal government would pick up part of the tab, but eventually we would end up having to bear the whole freight. And I voted no for that at town meeting because I knew I had the foresight as a financial analyst that things were going to be cooling off of the economy. In 2006, I led the effort to establish a financial planning group before the financial meltdown in 2008. So when that came, we were in good shape. So part of being a leader is having foresight. Part of being a leader is being able to make tough decisions. And I have a track record of doing that. And again, I think that my record speaks for itself. And I think that of the two of us, I'm the one that can bring about meaningful change in Boston because I did it in Hubbardston.
Donnie, you have a rebuttal for that? Or?
I can tell you this. I took over in 2008, so I didn't have the liberty of all the coffers full of money. The first year I got on, we got cut. So speaking as for an agent of change, one of the first motions I made was for the selectmen to zero out their salary, which we couldn't get the votes. It went to 1,000, and then eventually when some new members got on, it got to 0. I don't know any other towns around that did that. So I got on when all that money was cut, the $1 million from the state, and we took, I don't know, an $800,000 cut in our local receipts. And all that was mitigated without an override, and we fixed our town buildings, and we never laid off a person, and employees got raises. So I think that's a great track record.
Okay, Paul, you got the next
But you also have a deficit. You have to deal with
Mr. Castriotta, you had a chance for rebuttal.
All right.
Let's get a shot.
We're going to go off track just real quick here because you guys are talking about money and stuff. And over the last week or so, Deval Patrick has taken and moved 500 managers, mostly from the highway part of his government, and moved those managers into the National Association of Government Employees, which automatically locks them into a union, which automatically locks them into a 3% raise and another 3% raise. And now it will hamper the next governor that comes in. Basically, those people can never be getting rid of. Donnie, I want your opinion on that, whether you are for something like that, against something like that. Would you take a governor to task if he ever did that, if another governor ever did that again, especially where there was no thought given to the taxpayer?
Of course it's wrong, absolutely wrong. These people, I think, were part of the 10,000 new employees that the governor's hired in his last 8 years. And I would ask people this, it was, I forget the exact number, it was just over 10,000 new people that he hired, most in managerial positions like that. When you go to the registry, do you get faster service? Is it less crowded? Have you known the difference in services? Absolutely not. And I mean, the governor's done executive order stuff like that throughout his whole time. Just the one not too long ago that all of a sudden Mass Health is going to pay for gender reassignment surgery. So he's typically following along in the president's footsteps of changing these things arbitrarily as he goes. And I absolutely disagree with that because, you know, if Charlie Baker were to get in, you know, you governor, you get to bring in your own people. We saw when we had a superintendent come in and he got rid of a lot of people that weren't supposed to be here. And this is one way to protect them, and it's unfortunate they did that, but now that it's done, I don't think he can undo it. So.
Matt,
I don't know.
Do you have a rebuttal to that?
Well, I disagree with it. I don't think it was the right thing to do. Donnie brought up customer service at the registry. I can tell you that in Hubbardston, customer service is better than it used to be. There's more communication between boards. There's more communication between boards and residents. So for 15 years, I was all about customer service and making sure that people get a lot of bang for their dollar. So I think that was a poor decision on the governor's part. I am not Deval Patrick, and I am not afraid to stand up to the powers that be and voice my opinion. I think the taxpayers want accountability. They want good customer service, and they want people that can go to Beacon Hill and make tough decisions, and not just party line, but they want people to look at what the best solution is for the entire Commonwealth. And I don't think that the governor's decision there was in the best interest of the Commonwealth.
So we'll follow up with that real quick. There was $1 billion that was set aside and found for the convention center renovation. And at the same time, we've got education that's been cut and cut and cut. So I want your opinion on whether or not it's worth $1 billion to do over a convention, or is it worth $1 billion to put back into our education system? And Matt, we'll let you answer first.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, because I'm a straight talker. I don't have all the specifics on that $1 billion, and I'm not sure who the financial analyst was on that. I was a financial analyst in the corporate world, and I used to analyze $1 million projects. Again, I don't have the specifics, but certainly, as a public school teacher for 22 years, I would think that that $1 billion could have been would have helped a lot of school children across Massachusetts. I don't know what the return on the investment was on that project, but I can tell you $1 billion, the return on the investment in school children would be big. Smaller class sizes, more computers, more after-school programs. The return on that investment would be huge.
Donnie?
I agree. I don't know all the specifics either. But I did read an article that said that there is going to be no use for this convention center. It'll never be full, and they're going to have a hard time renting it, so why they did it in the first place. I mean, it's a bunch of things like this, like the $9 million, $11 million governor's office, and doing the 2 House chambers over, and if you've been in them lately, there's really nothing wrong with them. There's a whole slew of things like that that's happened at this state, and still it comes down to local aid. Money back to the cities and towns. Every town is hurting. Every town's having a hard time keeping up with the increase in the school budget. We have unfunded mandates, and I don't know if you guys have any kids math that you send out for the vocational ones. I mean, we're close to $300,000 a year now. That's an unfunded mandate from the state, and it's wrong, and it's killing the towns. Like I said, this year, a town of Spencer, size 12,000 people, we got $50,000 increase from the state and local aid. I mean, that's absurd with them spending money on all these other things. Local aid should be #1.
Okay, I want to do a follow-up question. Matt, going back to what you were saying when you're talking about, having the foresight and being a town leader and whatnot, you failed to mention your town's forensic audit, which I understand that hasn't come out yet. The AG's office is looking into this, and there was quite a disturbance about money and supposedly about malfeasance. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I can tell you what I can tell you, because
I understand
a lot of this is executive session, and I haven't been on the board since June. Our tax collector got into some trouble, and I'm going to back up a little bit. Back in the early 2000s, Hubbardston was very fortunate. We had 3 HR people from the corporate world that were willing to serve on our personnel board. Small town, 4,500 people, with 3 high-powered HR people to serve on the personnel board is unheard of. So they
volunteered.
They volunteered,
oh, really?
and so they worked with the board to create performance evaluations, a whole process where we can evaluate employees. So this particular employee, I was tasked with evaluating her and some other folks, and I always did my job. I went in, I evaluated, I looked at how time was spent, and back about 5-6 years ago, I came to the conclusion at that point that there were some problems going on there, and I actually voted to cut the tax collector's hours because part of the job had been outsourced, and I was the only member of the board that was willing to do that. I was willing to make government a little bit smaller. I was willing to make government more accountable. And as I said in candidates night in Hubbardston, if I could have gotten a second vote on that issue back in 2008, the tax collector wouldn't have had an extra 4 hours a week of vital time to find ways of getting into trouble. And that's about all I can say on the matter. But I'm all about accountability. I wrote more performance evaluations than any selectman in the history of Hubbardston. I always took that job seriously. And when we ended up with a strong town administrator, I made sure the town administrator, when I was chairman of the board, wrote those performance evaluations. So again, if folks had taken my lead back in 2008, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. In fact, that same employee was hoping to get an early retirement back about 2 years ago. And I stood in the way. I said, absolutely not. And had that employee gone out on early retirement, then the town would really be stuck holding the bag. We're fortunate in that particular employee is cooperating, but if they had taken early retirement and if I hadn't stood in the way, we would have been really up the creek without a paddle.
Now, when they asked you about this, you said in the paper this was a special audit when it was actually a forensic audit. Was there a reason you used the term special audit?
I don't believe I was ever quoted as a special
That's
audit.
what I saw in the paper. That's what I saw in the
Okay,
article.
well, I think that's a misquote.
Okay, that's
Okay.
possible.
I thought it said forensic audit.
But
The AG's office said it was a
yeah,
forensic.
well, again, these are personnel issues, and you know you have to be very
No, I
very
understand.
careful what
I
you say.
understand. It's more
Yeah.
of a follow-up question
Yeah.
about the
But
forensic
essentially,
audits
the
and-
district attorney is investigating. But I can tell you, as a selectman who did my job, I investigated when I wrote performance evaluations. And like I said, 6 years ago, I made the decision that somebody was working, getting paid way too many hours, and didn't have enough to do. And we all know what happens when there's too much idle time.
I'm hip.
She's going to get an early retirement now, right?
Needless to say. Donnie, question goes back to you. You mentioned, you know, you talking about coming in and having all these issues. You failed to mention it was a $1.2 million override in 2008.
It was.
And we did find the $1.2 million 3 weeks afterwards, and there was never an underride proposed
They did. And I came out against that.
against.
That was when I got elected. That was on the ballot when I got elected.
Yeah, I remember you and I talked about that at length.
Yep.
And I
But
remember
unfortunately, all that money got cut that same year too. So we.
Oh, I know. It
any money
ended
they
up being
found,
a wash.
like 600,000 less even with that. So, but that's free cash.
Okay, that's what I
so.
wanted to follow up on because that's quite I had questions.
I think
on.
it was actually, and Jennifer ran back then too, and I think her and I were the only two against
I
that.
believe so. I believe that was the case. Texas recently has voted the voter ID bill supported by the Supreme Court. And the problem with this is it gives illegal aliens driver's license. So obviously I'm going to be asking this question. Where do you stand on this issue? Donnie, let's start with you.
Absolutely not. I went to the State House, and it was just by chance to talk to a couple reps and meet a couple people. The day they were having these committee hearings on the driver's licenses, it was over the winter. And I had to park in the theater district because every garage was full. And I'm standing outside Peter Durant's office, and there's 50 people lined up with red T-shirts against the wall saying, "We demand our rights." So only in this state can people who are here illegally and should be deported be in our State House with T-shirts demanding rights that they don't have. So absolutely not on driver's licenses for illegal immigrants.
Okay.
Was that the question?
Yep, that was the question. Matt?
This is one of those issues that Donnie and I are going to agree on. I also think that that is a poor decision.
Okay,
Yep.
that's fair.
Son
Mr.
of a gun,
Fournier?
I thought we were going to have a heated battle back and forth.
No, that's.
We're both too old and too tired to battle.
I think it's kind of a no-brainer, but that's you never know.
Well, I mean, there are some politicians that are dead set against it. There's some politicians that are for it. And the ones that are for it feel like you can keep track of those people a little better than without. Why don't you just close the borders?
Why do you have to keep track of them? They don't belong here.
I agree. Gas tax. The proposed law would eliminate the requirement that the state's gasoline tax be adjusted every year by the percentage change in the consumer price index over the preceding year, but not be adjusted below 21.5 cents per gallon. Question, the gas tax has been a huge issue for voters in Mass, and now the legislature wants it to be an automatic tax taken out of the legislature's hands. How is this fair to voters, and how would you vote if elected?
Me? there's a bunch of issues around this. First of all, in Massachusetts, I mean, and this has been in the paper quite frequently lately, that it's about 10 times we pay for a mile of road to fix it than everywhere else in the country. So obviously there's a problem there, whether it be accountability or I don't know what the issue is, but obviously we need to audit that, look at that, and find out what's going on. So there's plenty of money. I believe the gas tax, and I could be wrong, it's about $700 million a year it brings in. More than enough money for the roads. The problem is it gets borrowed for MBTA, all these different places. As far as the gas tax, we all want the roads fixed. I mean, we have probably the worst roads in the whole country. I know there was more Chapter 90 money proposed this year, but the governor refused to release it in a transportation bond bill. The gas tax automatic increase is a very dangerous area. What's to stop the legislature, if they'll do this, from doing it to another one or another one? I mean, originally the minimum wage, when it was proposed, part of the original bill was to index that to inflation. So that would be never ending. I feel if you're a legislator, you want to go represent your district, you should have the intestinal fortitude to be able to take these votes. If they want to increase it every year, then bring it up every year and vote on it every year. So as far as the repeal, and the question is only for the repeal of the automatic indexing. It's not going to repeal the 3 cents.
Correct.
So as far as the automatic indexing, I'm absolutely against that.
Okay, Josh just brought up a good point. The good follow-up
Where's
question.
Josh?
Did you want me to answer?
Oh, I'm sorry, Matt. I'm sorry.
Can you we let him answer that?
I'm
Okay,
Josh,
all right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't think there's anything more important than the safety of our children and our families and our neighbors. And this is a public safety issue. Roads, bridges need to be repaired. We live in New England, and we have the freezing and the thawing cycle, and of course roads are going to deteriorate. Hubbardston was a beneficiary of a $1 million grant last year. The $1 million we got from the state, the $2 million that we put in from our own budget allowed us to reconstruct 8 miles of roads. The money has to come somewhere. You know, programs, roads and bridges, they cost money. I think that automatic increase is a small price to pay to keep our families safe, to make our infrastructure better. You know, better infrastructure helps the economy. It provides for jobs. It provides more companies are going to want to relocate here. Less companies are going to want to leave here if we have good infrastructure. Whether it's roads, bridges, public transportation, it's all part of the package. How do we make Massachusetts competitive? We need good infrastructure.
Okay, that's. I understand your logic, and Josh just said to me, the problem with that logic is it doesn't necessarily address the issue of the automatic tax increase. Those are two separate issues. I mean, you're saying, okay, I support this, but what about the additional? We're talking about a tax increase that's going to happen regardless of.
Well,
what's
right,
going
but inflation's always going to be there. Material is going to go up. The cost of labor is going to go up. The cost of steel is going to go up. So if all the inputs are going to go up, then the revenue stream to pay for it has to go up. I mean, money doesn't grow on trees, and we're not going to float bonds to China to pay for it. If the inputs are going up, then the revenue stream to pay for it has to go up. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to fix as many roads and bridges and take care of public transportation.
Okay, Donnie.
I agree. Costco, I agree with you 100%. And it's a public safety issue. I'm with you on all that. The automatic indexing, absolutely not. Like I said, it sets a dangerous precedent. If the state's so concerned about things going up and costing more every year, which they do, I mean, we're both selectmen. I mean, you guys are on the school committee. You know that stuff increases every year. Then they should increase our state aid and local aid and school aid for the rate of inflation every year so we could keep up, which they don't. It's not even close. So this is just a way for the legislature to get out of having to take in a vote they don't want to take. I agree with Matt on all the points except for the automatic increase. He's absolutely right. Public safety but there's more than enough money. It needs to be spent better. I mean, we've seen the articles on how much it costs for a mile of road, you know, in this state. For I think the last 10 years we've been trying to fix 31. the road I live on. And it took this year, finally, Peter Durant filed an amendment in the bond bill for the money for that. And that finally got approved. So, but yeah, public safety, all that, I agree 100%. But this sets a very dangerous precedent when this gets done.
Matt?
Well, I want to go back to what I mentioned earlier.
Can you hold that thought just for 1 second?
Sure.
Matt? We got a call that's coming in. Good evening, caller. Thanks for calling in. What's your question?
Both of these candidates want to replace Ann Colby. Ann was always a friend of the Second Amendment and gun owners in this area. She even went head-to-head with the leaders of her own party on many occasions, and she voted against every new regulation that came up every single time. I checked the NRA today, and they gave candidate Berthiaume a 94% score, and they gave Mr. Castriotta a question mark. I'd like both candidates to explain their positions on our constitutional right to bear arms and why there's a question mark on Mr. Castriotta.
Great question.
Good question. You want to stay on the line, caller?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Matt,
you
I guess
wanna take it?
I guess you go first.
Well, thank you for bringing that to my attention that I have a question mark because, frankly, I'm not sure why I have a question mark on the NRA website. They never reached out. You know, typically organizations will send you a mailing, a questionnaire, and they ask you to fill it out, or they encourage you to go to their website. And I never got any information from the NRA. I could tell you that I have the support of Steve Brewer and Ann Goby, who both have very high ratings from the NRA. So I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. I'm from a family of sportsmen myself. I have no problem with people owning a gun. And now that you brought that to my attention, I'm going to call the NRA tomorrow and find out what I can do to rectify that.
Do you have a gun license yourself? I'm just
I do not.
Okay.
But I live, I have 600 acres of fishing state land behind me, and hunters are going in there all the time. So I don't have a problem with that. But I am from a family of sportsmen, so I do not have an issue with the Second Amendment at all. I mean, I have had relatives fight and die for that amendment, so absolutely support it.
I think you got it wrong. I got an A rating from the NRA, and I got, I think, 98 from Goal. And I got questionnaires from both, but when we had that fire, they both got kind of misplaced. So I found the Goal and sent that in, and just recently I've sent the NRA one in, so they just updated my rating last week. But so I'm an A with them, and I think a 98 with Goal, I think. Okay. Yeah, that's how it is, yeah.
Any other questions, caller? Ooh, guess not. Okay. I'm sorry, Matt. You go on and say what you were talking about before I cut you off.
Well, we were talking about the gas increase. You know, Donnie, the gas index. Donnie, you know, mentioned getting more roads, more money for local aid. But you know what? It's kind of like fuzzy math to me. You want more money for local aid, but you don't want to give more money for roads and bridges. So now, basically, what you've done is you've kept the pie the same size, but you're demanding a bigger piece of it for local aid. So, you know, I have a track record as a selectman in Hubbardston for making the cost to do business less. We've outsourced, we've regionalized, and Hubbardston voters are getting a lot of bang for the dollar. I want to take that mentality to Beacon Hill. If there's waste, I believe that I have the ability, I have the track record, I have the analytical skills as a former financial analyst in the corporate world with a finance degree to go in and find it and hold people accountable.
Okay, so let's going to follow that real quick. We pay excise tax, correct? Everybody pays excise tax to the town that you live in. Right? Where does that money go? Anybody?
It's supposed to come back to the town?
So,
but where
does it go?
That's a good question.
Does it go to the state?
It goes to the state, and then a certain portion is supposed to come back. And it used to be, I think it was supposed to be all of it at one time,
yes.
But now it's a percentage.
Okay, so we're already paying excise tax that is to the towns are collecting that give to the state, and that money goes into the general fund. It doesn't go back to our town.
Which
roads.
goes up all the time because car prices go up all the time.
So here we have this gas tax. So this is double taxation. right? Because we're already giving to go to an excise tax, but we don't get it back. So can you explain to me how that would work if we're going to put an additional gas tax and excise tax? Where's the money going to go?
Well, you know, our society puts a lot of demands on government, locally, at the state level, and the national level. And I think all of us, individuals and families, need to ask ourselves, what can we do to be more self-sufficient? You know, twice in my life, I turned down unemployment. I built a house big enough for elderly parents because I believe that people should be as self-sufficient as possible. But we live in a society that places high demands on government at all levels. So, you know, when the excise tax went into effect many, many years ago, we didn't have an aging population. We didn't have all these demands placed on public education. The cost to repair roads and bridges didn't cost as much money. So, you know, could things be done better? I believe they can. One of us, I think, has a track record to go down and make it happen. But you know what? I think all of us as a society, we need a discussion about what we can do as individuals to not cost as much money for the state.
Donnie?
Let me say this about track record. When I get on the board, and I'm not going to take credit for all this, our auditor, Scanlon Associates, who I think is doing Matt's audit. I think they are.
Yes, yeah.
We were, you know, we had issues, you know, half a dozen issues, minor stuff, and a few things that needed to be changed. 2 years ago, when he completed his audit, Tom Scanlon himself came into our meeting, and they have 95 clients, I believe, between towns and school districts. And I asked Tom on TV publicly, you know, where are we at? And he said we are in the top 5 on how well financially run Spencer is. Last year when he came in, and he didn't have anything written for no comments or no problems on the audit. And one of the things he always joked about was, you always have something. He came in the next year, and we figured he'd find something, because him being irritated from the year before it, not finding anything. And I asked him the same question. And I jokingly said, hey, if we went way down the list, you don't have to say it publicly. And he said we were number 2. So out of his 95 clients, we were the number 2 most well financially run out of all 95. And that was last year. I don't know if they've got the audit this year. So over those 6 years, and that was on a board with a Tea Party guy and a lefty liberal, and we got it done together. I told you some of the things that we had done. You guys live in town, and you know it's stuff that no other town has done. The piece of the pie with the gas tax, the problem is the taxes in the state, the piece of the pie has gotten bigger. It's gotten a lot bigger. The sales tax,
That was a referendum vote where that was supposed to be
in
dropped back
2000,
down.
yeah, and the legislature said no.
Correct.
So the pie has gotten a lot bigger. It's gotten 26 billion to 36 billion in 10 years. And the problem is we're still down $500,000 in Spencer in local aid. I'm sure Hubbardston's down. I think the only town that's up is Phillipston in this area, and they're up just a little bit. That's an issue for me. When we're going to pay for somebody to have gender reassignment surgery, when we are a right to shelter state where anybody in this country can move here and automatically get paid housing, when we have, I've heard many estimates, up to 50,000 illegal immigrants here, or more, on welfare, when they don't belong here, they shouldn't be getting these benefits, and we're getting less money to our schools and less money to our towns, the pie isn't the problem, it's where the money in that pie is going.
Okay.
So you're against the indexing?
If I didn't make that clear,
Could you clarify that, Mr.
Is this going to be on the outtakes?
this whole show's an outtake. Actually, the one me and Wendy used to
Careful,
do,
this ain't over
So
yet,
this is-
Ty.
it was one big outtake. We used to have a
So
lot
it
of
was, are you in agreement it's double taxation, the excise tax and the increase in the gas?
You know what? That's fine. We have the excise tax, and the excise tax always goes up. I mean, I just bought a truck last year that the sticker was 40 grand. The last one I bought, it was 30. And obviously the excise, it's going to be more and more. I think it took a nosedive during the recession, but it's back up to the levels it was before.
So, just so the voters understand, you two are completely different on this. You're in favor of it, and you're against it,
I'm against the indexing.
and you're in favor.
And I support it.
Okay.
But yeah, that could have been a real simple question.
Well, no, you guys are supposed to argue back and forth. It's called a debate.
I told you, we're both pushing 50. We're too old, too tired, too old.
Wait till you get there.
Yeah, I know. It's coming.
Let's go on to gaming. I'm not sure where you guys stand on that. So, you know, that's been a hot topic for the last couple of years.
Yep.
And we've got some things on the table. So, expanding prohibitions on gaming. The proposed law would prohibit the Massachusetts Gaming Commission from issuing any license for casino or other gaming establishments. Prohibit any such casino or slots gaming under any such licenses issued by the commission before the proposed law took effect, and prohibit wagering on the simulcast of live greyhound races. It's a yes or a no vote. Where do you guys stand on this kind of stuff? And Matt, it's up your turn.
Well, I'm in favor of. I'm not a gambler. I'm not opposed to it. I think we have enough gambling establishments in the country. I'm really skeptical that, from a local aid standpoint, that the gambling is going to pan out for municipalities across the state. I mean, that was the carrot, that bring in gambling and it's going to be the panacea for local aid, and towns and cities will get more money. Well, I'm really skeptical on the numbers. So, I mean, ultimately the voters are going to decide whether or not we should expand gambling. I personally am not in favor of it.
Donnie?
Matt's right. And this was done when they introduced the lottery. When was that? 1980 or whenever it was.
Something like that.
That all the money, besides the money to administer it, would come back to the cities and towns. That doesn't happen. We don't get all the lottery aid back to the cities and towns.
Kind of like the excise tax, huh?
Exactly. And that's not just for the administration. That's money that's taken for other things. Let the voters decide on this. I mean, I'm going to vote. I'm not going to vote to repeal it. The thing I like what the legislature did is they allowed local control. So they let the towns vote. So every town, if you want a casino, you have a vote. And if the people vote, then fine. If not, then you don't get it. And I think it's Springfield and Revere that passed
coming
it.
up on that, yeah.
So let the people vote. The concern I have is they've used, I forget how many, it's hundreds of millions of dollars, I believe, in estimated revenue from this for this coming fiscal year's budget. So if this fails, then that money goes away. So I'm afraid that local aid is going to get cut again, because that's typically the first go-to is local aid. I'm not against casinos. I mean, Wendy and I go, maybe once a year. But I like that it's left up to the towns. The problem is I saw where Speaker DeLeo was asked, and he said he was going to, on TV, respect the will of the voters. And I hope if it goes down, they do, because they don't have to. They can just change the rules and keep it anyway. So, but it's let the people decide. If the people want to get rid of them, then great. I'm off. The people decided, and let's get rid of them. If they want to keep them, then let's keep them.
I thought the beauty of voting this in the first place was the first thing they did was the Patrick administration set up a commission of 5 people that they pay over $500,000 to, which is, once again, to me, showing an administration that constantly tries to grow government and not so much the towns. Following up on that, total state aid to cities and towns in Massachusetts, including aid for education and general local aid, has dropped by $1.7 million over the last 3 decades after adjusting for economic growth. Non-education aid has declined by about $1.3 billion over the last 3 decades and is currently at its lowest point in 30 years. Chapter 70 funding in a regional school system is being looked at by the state as a 50-50 proposition, and not 90%. It is supposed to be funded in a regional district agreement which both of your towns share. As you both represented towns with regional school district, answer this next question. Can you justify raising taxes in Massachusetts while still providing less local aid and education to towns? We'll start with you, Matt.
Well, there's a lot to answer there. How much time do I have?
30 seconds.
Well, the fact that local aid has gone down is concerning and unacceptable. But again, I go back to what we did in Hubbardston. You know, all our departments are fully funded, even though local aid has gone down. And how is that possible? Because we made government better. We made government more efficient. We made government more accountable. We still have a library. We still have dispatch. We have 24/7 EMS. I don't know that Spencer's going to have that in 2 weeks. But we had the foresight, and we had the backbone to make the tough decisions. You know, we had to go to town meeting to sell regional dispatch. You know, I took some hits on that. But in the end, it saved the town over $100,000 a year. So government is smaller and more efficient in Hubbardston. I plan on taking that to Beacon Hill and bringing that analytical skills that I have to look at the budget and look at programs and do the audits and find out where we can save money. So it's unacceptable that it's gone down, but I can tell you in Hubbardston, you know, we're making it work even though it has gone down. And you know, and I think a lot depends on how you define local aid. You know, we just got over $50,000 this past year to reconstruct our playground at our elementary school. Technically, that's not considered local aid. We had $1 million to reconstruct our roads in Hubbardston. Technically, that's not considered local aid. We got $800,000 to preserve Mount Jefferson in Hubbardston. Technically, that's not local aid. So I think you have to look at how you really define local aid. I've been fortunate to have representation, representatives who fought to bring that money to us. But I do believe that there are ways of doing things better in Boston. We found ways of doing things better in Hubbardston. So again, I have a track record that I can speak to and that I'm very proud of. And I'm gonna, if I'm fortunate enough to get to Beacon Hill, I'm gonna bring that same mentality, the ability to take tough stands and turn over every rock to find savings.
What was the question?
Can you justify raising taxes
want it
in
in
Mass
writing?
while
No,
providing
I
less
can't.
local aid and education to towns?
When this override came out in '08 when I was on, this was one of the reasons why I ran. And you were paying attention. I don't know if you were
Not yet.
following it.
But I pay attention now.
They said, if we don't have this, we're going to lose cops, fire, this. You know, it was a scare tactic. And that was one of the driving forces behind me running. And it passed because you scare the elderly. And I was so mad at that, I ran. And in a 5-way race, I cleaned up. Last year, when the school fiasco happened, and the state said we had to give them whatever it was, 700,000 more, which is where that deficit comes from. We did an override, but it was, listen, and there was discussion about cops and this, and it's like, absolutely not. So we took the least affected, or least important parts of the budget, like the parks. They're still important, but then they don't have to do a public safety, and put that on the ballot instead of the scare tactic thing. There's plenty of money in Boston. There's plenty. And when you define local aid as different aid, tell that to, I mean, other towns might not have been as fortunate as Spencer. We didn't have to lay anybody off. We still have the same employees. That they've had to lay off a cop, or they've had to lay off firemen, or cut policemen's overtime. Tell that to those guys that got laid off, that $30,000 to fix a playground is the same as local aid. It's not. It's inexcusable. Money is wasted in the state. It's because of the one-party rule, and it needs to change.
All right, Josh has informed me we're down to the 10-minute mark, so we're going to give you. Well, we have a call. All right.
I never got calls when I did the show.
Josh is just checking with the. Do we have the caller on the line, Josh? Yeah. All right.
Hello?
Good evening, caller. How you doing?
Hi.
What's your question?
Hey, Bob. Bob, my question is, well, if they could explain why the governor took 500 managers, made them union, so that the incoming governor can't
He too
replace
many
them with
budget
his own
people, yeah.
people.
He
And
told me
also,
when-
is it my opinion that
the gas tax now goes into the general fund and doesn't necessarily go to roads. They can use it for whatever they want. Is this true?
The first question, the first part of that question, caller, they already answered. We had asked. Paul had brought that up. And the second part, do you guys want to answer the second part of the question?
Any taxes they take, gas tax, any of that, it's supposed to be dedicated for that certain thing. And like the aid for lottery, it's supposed to come back to cities and towns. There's a 2.5-cent tax on gasoline for underground tank repair. So if somebody abandons a gas station, it's got underground tanks, there's a 2.5-cent tax on a gallon of gas that goes in a fund to fix that. They never use it, so that money gets borrowed every year for pet projects or this. So none of that has to go anywhere. It can be moved anywhere. I mean, and that's part of the issue we have in this state.
Yeah.
Yeah, money can get moved around, and that doesn't make me comfortable as a taxpayer. And again, I think people want more accountability. They want better accounting. And again, I keep going back to what we did, and I say we because it was a collaborative effort of what we did in Hubbardston, okay, to straighten things out. We have all our departments fully funded without raising property taxes. We straightened things out, and I think, again, we need better accountability and better accounting in Boston. And so the question is, who has the track record to go down there and make it happen?
Does that answer your question, caller?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you for calling.
And just so that caller knows, both of them disagree with Governor Patrick's moving those 500 managers into the NAGE, which is that
Absolutely.
union. So.
All right, so we'll give you each a chance to ask each other a question. We'll start with you, Donnie. If you want to ask Mr. Castriotta a question.
Are you having fun campaigning?
Sure.
You can extrapolate on it a little bit.
Well, campaigning is a tough thing. You know, Donnie and I didn't give up our jobs to campaign. We both have kids. We both have homes. We both have lawns that need to be mowed and leaves that need to be raked. So yeah, it's been a tough balancing act. But the finish line's in sight, so the voters will decide soon, and then we can get back to living normally, right?
Was it 10 days? 9 days? 10 days. I don't even know anymore.
That was a grueling question, Donnie. Mr. Castriotta, we'll give you a chance.
I saw people at church the other day in the cars there, and I thought it was Monday, so I didn't know what to...
My question won't be as much of a softball question for Donnie. It's more for a point of clarification. So when you ran in 2008, you were opposed to the override.
Yes.
Which ended up passing?
It did pass, yep.
So now let's imagine that override failed then.
Yep.
So you're already $500,000 in the hole right now. So you would be almost $2 million in the hole right now if that didn't go through. So how would that have helped police officers and firemen in the school and library? You were opposed to it then. So I would think Spencer would be in a bigger predicament. And why didn't you do more to tighten the belt and reach across town line and regionalize? And if you had, Spencer would be in a better financial position.
I can tell you the reason I opposed the override was how they did it. They threatened the elderly with losing cops and other things that were important to them, and it was a scare tactic thing. I don't like that. Tell the truth, tell what you're going to do. Fortunately, I mean, at the time it passed. As Bob said, the previous town administrator, he had, and I forget where that money came from.
It was
some
overpaid insurance policies, overpaid bills.
Which worked out great for Spencer because when that happened, that year we got cut to $2 million. And we have regionalized. We've regionalized 7 jobs, actually hired more people. Unions paid more for their insurance, and every building in this town is fixed 100%. We just purchased a new ladder truck, and I guess they're getting ready to purchase a new engine with cash.
So what departments did you regionalize?
We regionalized part of the assessor's office. We regionalized the planner. We regionalized the building inspector, human resources, and there's one other one that I haven't been there in a while, so I can't remember. So we did all that, and like I said, the first thing we did was get rid of our salary, as to set an example. Worked with all the unions were great. Our employees took a wage freeze for 2 years, and everybody was great. Everybody pitched in and worked together. Regionalized those jobs, froze fees, so because it was a tough economy. And as you know, probably the best report card of a town is their audit. So last year we were number 2 out of 95. So I think we did pretty good.
All right, gentlemen, we're just about at the end of our time, so we're going to give you each 2 minutes to talk and sell yourself to the voters and let them know why they should be voting for you. Matt, let's start with you.
Okay, well, again, I appreciate the opportunity to come on tonight. So I spent a lot of time in Spencer for the last 4 months. I've had a campaign office on Main Street since the end of June. I've got to know a lot of people in the town here. And people are concerned about the direction that Spencer is going in, and they're concerned about the direction that the state is going in. I have a track record as a selectman in Hubbardston of being an agent of change. I have a track record of making government smaller and more efficient. I have a track record of making tough decisions. I presented a budget at town meeting in June with a $12,000 budget surplus, all departments fully funded. My opponent can't speak to that. My opponent left the board with a $500,000 deficit. I left the board with a $12,000 surplus. I think that speaks volumes about our past as well as what we can do in the future serving you on Beacon Hill. So I would appreciate your vote on November 4th. Feel free to call me. Check out my website, mattcastriotta.com, if you have any questions about my candidacy. I'm always willing to sit down at your dining room table and answer any questions that you have. But most importantly, please vote on November 4th. Our veterans fought hard so that we have the opportunity to vote. My great-great-great-great-grandfather actually moved to Spencer in 1854 to Wire Village and then volunteered to fight in the Civil War and almost died in his first battle. So our veterans have fought hard for the right to vote. So whether you vote for me or for Donnie, just make sure you vote. Thank you.
My father grew up in Wire Village.
We're probably related.
You never know. No.
Out of nowhere.
The $500 tactic isn't going to work in this town because the people know what I have done on this board. The people know what we have done as a board of selectmen in this town. And the people know that that was a school department issue. And the people also know that the teachers union was the only union in this town that wouldn't cooperate with us. So everybody knows when you say there's a $1,000 deficit in Spencer, what it's from. It's not from the selectmen. It's from what happened to the school department. People know me in town. If you don't, Wendy and I started all the stuff for the kids. We brought all that back. We did a TV show here for 3.5 years on local issues. Meeting people in the district. People are frustrated. People are discouraged. They see what's going on in the state, and it's past the point of being angry. They're just discouraged. We can fix that, but we can't fix that by keeping things the same. When we have 29 Republicans out of 160, it's not going to work. This year in the budget season, just for an example, if people don't know, when they were setting up rules for the budget debate, because they set up rules on how they're going to debate the budget, the Democratic majority in Boston ruled that any amendment to do with increasing local aid, increasing Chapter 70 money, or anything to do with EBT reform would be ruled out of order. So they did not even let anybody bring forth those amendments to be debated. It needs to change. It needs to change so much that Matt's former opponent endorsed me last week, George Iancidis. George is a small business owner, lifelong Democrat, his whole family, but he's a business owner, and he knows how hard it is in this state. We're 47th out of 50th in business-friendly states due to taxes and regulation, and the list goes on. It needs to change. So I'll ask for your vote on November 4th, and me and Matt will let you know if we're related. Thank you. Good night.
Jeez.
Unbelievable. As always, I want to thank our guest, Matt Castriotta, and his cousin, Donnie Berthiaume. I'd like to thank Paul Fournier, as always. I'm glad you saved the boat. Thank you to Josh, to Aaron, and to Kyle Gibbons. And we'll see you next time on the other side. Have a good night.
Thank you.